Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Kenny, and we are here without Lady Chow Fung or Adam tonight, so it's just going to be the two of us, and we'll be talking about a film called The Oily Maniac for the final Halloween episode of Wuxia Weekend. We've already discussed Black Magic 2, Hex, and now we're doing another Ho Meng-Hua film. This is a 1976 movie starring Danny Lee, Cheng Ping, and Lily Lili. It's an interesting movie. I guess I would describe it as Toxic Avenger meets Swamp Thing. It's about a guy who had polio as a kid and is a little unsure of himself and self-loathing as a result of his condition, and unlucky in love. But he's smitten with a woman named Zhao Yu, and in order to protect her, he performs a magic ritual that turns him into this oily maniac. And he just goes a little bit too far in his efforts to defend and protect, and eventually it sort of spirals out of control. And we'll get into sort of the details of that over the course of the episode. But I don't know. That's the basic rundown. Kenny, what did you think of this movie?
To some extent, I didn't enjoy it quite as much as all the other movies we've watched. It was still good, but I think what sort of took it away from me was the special effects. They were just a little bit too, like, the Oily Maniac just looked a bit too goofy to really feel like it was any sort of creepy vibes or magical vibes there. It looked like he had buck teeth and his eyes were like, you have to see it to understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When you see it, you'll probably agree that it's not the most threatening of things, and I get what they were trying to go for, trying to paint him as a sort of like a force of nature, unstoppable thing. But a lot of the time as well, it was just like he didn't. Yeah, he still also seemed quite weak for what he was supposed to be. So to be fair, that's just mainly the criticism on the monster in the movie. I think the rest of the movie was fine. The plot, the schemes were a bit convoluted, trying to understand how it all tied together. But yeah, in general, I think the movie was fine as it was, but not the best, I would say.
Yeah, I thought this was an okay movie, and it's funny, the suit didn't bother me so much, maybe because I grew up watching a lot of rubber suit monster movies, so I filed it into that category. But I feel like there was something, it wasn't used effectively to scare me. I guess we should get into this topic before we get into anything else, actually. This is Halloween. This is a horror movie. Did this movie scare you at all, or did you find that this was more of sort of a popcorn type horror movie?
No, if anything, the movie's Hex was way scarier. Yeah. And Black Magic was way creepier. So this one was just sort of
Yeah. Do you think it's fair, though, for us to criticize it for that? Because I'm wondering, do you think, was the intent here to really scare people, or was the intent to kind of gross people out and just have a cool monster?
I'm trying to imagine, but back in 1976, how would I have viewed this movie? Obviously I have no sort of frame of reference there for what.
I was born in 76, so I don't have one either. But I mean, I grew up in the wake of it, so I remember movies from that era.
Yeah, so I feel like even for people of that era, I don't think they would have thought this was scary at all, right? Do you think your parents would have thought this was scary if they watched it?
So I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, in the early 80s, I remember watching a lot of horror movies that were basically monsters in suits, and I remember I think at one point they had there was a 3D movie on TV. Not really 3D, you had the crappy 3D glasses, and it didn't really have a 3D effect. You kind of had to almost use your imagination. But I think it was King Kong or something like that. But it was a similar type of thing, and that stuff I thought was scary at the time. In this case, I think the thing that takes away the scariness is sort of the same thing that makes the Toxic Avenger, which isn't really supposed to be scary anyways, but which makes that not scary, and that's that the bad guy in this, or the monster, is a good guy. Do you know what I mean? He's not you're rooting for the oily maniac. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think yeah, so what really makes it not scary for me here is that you understand the motivations perfectly of the ghost. Like you know exactly what they're doing, and you actually want them to succeed at it.
Yeah.
So that in itself just makes it so that it's you know to use a modern analogy, it's like watching a Venom movie, right? Like, yeah, the new Venom movie where, yeah, you have a guy who's got a symbiote who's a bit of a psychopathic thing but he does good things. So you kind of want, yeah, you're doing good things. That's fine. Go for it. Break a few backs while you're doing it, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean it's yeah, because everybody that we except for the very end when he attacks the detectives. Up until that point, he's only killing people that have done bad things and like pretty terrible things. And it's all stemming from his interest to protect you. So it just I don't know. Again, I don't know if being scary was the point of the movie either. But I guess where I feel the reason I would give it an okay rating and not a great rating is like I would compare it to a movie like Killer Snakes, and in that it's a similar type of thing where that's like a character study of a guy who sort of spirals into the darkness like this, except instead of turning into an oily maniac, he has all these snakes that do his bidding, and he uses them to ultimately to sort of vent his anger at the world. And so that I thought was a much more impactful movie because it was a little more serious, and the resolution of the film, it felt like a proper conclusion to this guy who had really just kind of gone off the deep end and spiraled out of control. And but it still sort of kept you sympathetic to him. And this movie does a little bit of that with like the polio background and all that stuff, but something about it just didn't land as well as a movie like Killer Snakes for me. It didn't establish it didn't get me into the head of that character in the same way.
And I can agree with that because I just think it maybe it's just because like it I think it's just because he had like one goal and everybody else is so evil there. It's just sort of it just seemed so obvious, like how things were going to turn out, right? There's never really any suspense on what was going to happen. I mean, we know, we're already told from the beginning that he was going to get a horrific fate if he were to misuse the magic, and even partway through the movie, he asks for his colleague who's got a crush on him to kill him so that he can put an end to the killings, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's all sort of stuff we know is going to happen, and there really isn't much tension in this movie at all, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of the movie is kind of waiting for things to happen that you feel like are going to happen, and even at the end, like he kind of announces what he has to do, and you're just sort of waiting for him to kill those two guys, and so it doesn't feel like there's a lot of surprises. I did think there were a lot of interesting pieces to the movie. The parts I like it in sort of the same way I liked Heaven and Hell, which is there are just these cool little things that are going on throughout the movie. But to me it wasn't, and again, I suspect a lot of people will disagree with me, but I don't feel that this was as strong as Ho Meng-Hua's Black Magic or Black Magic 2. Those I thought were more effective for the kinds of movies they were than this. But this did some fun things. I think if you like the sleaze factor and like the cheesiness of it, I think it's the sort of movie that'll entertain you. But I feel like, I don't know. So when I was watching it, I was thinking, wouldn't the movie maybe be a little bit better if we never actually saw the Oily Maniac and we never knew who the Oily Maniac was until the very end? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just thought that I didn't know how to feel about him constantly transforming into this monster and going on these killing sprees, because it was. I thought it might have been more interesting if we were kind of wondering, hey, is this guy with the crutches secretly the Oily Maniac, or is it like Lily Lee's character or somebody? You know what I mean? I thought that might have been a more interesting plot line to follow.
Yeah. I would agree, I think, but at the same time, that'd be so much more difficult to write for. Like, I don't know if, yeah, how convoluted of a plot like people like Ho Meng-Hua would want to try and direct here, because trying to write a movie where you have a monster that's an unknown, but yeah, it's one of the cast is gonna be difficult. I guess if they could shuffle things around to make it so that we don't learn about how he finds the ritual until towards the end of the movie in a flashback type of thing.
Yeah.
Then yeah, that would work. But yeah, just from the way that the movie is laid out at the moment, there's literally no way like that would really flow well, right? But I do think if there was a bit of like, yeah, the mystery factor is very important. There was very little mystery in the movie, and as a result of that, there was basically no tension, like I mentioned already. And when there's no tension, it's really hard to sort of feel excited when anything happens. Like, yeah, it was like, yay, the bad guys get their just desserts, but at the same time, I was just like, well, there wasn't any. It lacked the punch, I'd say. I'm not sure how else I'd better describe that, but it just lacked punch.
Well, and I'm going to spoil a key plot point, so don't listen if you don't want to be spoiled about it. But what did you think about when Yu commits suicide, and there was, I get, was that sufficient tension for you? The sort of the him racing against the clock to get to her before they before she was transferred over to the nefarious bad guy, or was that just kind of predictable for you?
Predictable because the pacing on that bit was just a little bit off. Like, if I'm trying to remember that scene correctly, I think we don't see him rushing off for the factory until like after the deed has happened, and Xiao Yu was already looking at the hook, right? So it was just like, well, if it was just slightly different, if he'd just woven the scenes just a bit differently to make it seem like they weren't sequential events, then they'd be like, oh my god, is he gonna make it in time? But because of the way he framed it, it's like, well, he's gonna go there and she's gonna be dead, and he's gonna go all Hulk on the remaining two baddies, right?
Well, and now that you mentioned the Hulk, how do you think this would? I mean, so we've been thinking of it through a horror movie lens, but what about a superhero lens? Does this function well as a superhero movie?
I think so. Like I would think it's a better superhero movie than it's a horror movie for sure.
Because I did find it intriguing to think about in those terms when I was watching it. I found I engaged the material more when I thought about him as a superhero and having this superpower. It just seemed a little bit more entertaining to me than trying to assess it as a horror movie.
Yeah, definitely. Because I already mentioned like an analogy to the Venom, the Marvel hero, and I think this has like a very good sort of setting that could have been stretched out over like a whole season of a TV series kind of thing, where every time he uses his power or transforms into the Oily Maniac, it seems like he's drained afterwards, and he's making a mess everywhere. So there could be little fun beats of him trying to clean all the oil from his room to stop people from finding out that he's the Oily Maniac, and trying to not fall asleep at work, and like all sorts of hijinks that go around that.
Yeah, no, it's an interest. He's an interesting type of monster. Like as sort of like his heroic powers go. And I like. What did you think? So the way that this creature works, he performed this ritual, and then anytime he comes into contact with oil, it seems like he turns into the Oily Maniac. Is that the?
Well, he has to be doused completely in oil, right? Well,
it's not like if his finger just touches it. He has to pour it all over him or dunk himself in it.
Well, every time you see him do it, like I don't know if this is sort of restricted for the special effects reasons, but it's not just him spraying himself with oil. He then after he sprayed himself with oil, he has to jump into a vat of oil one way or another, right? Oh, I don't know. Actually,
I don't think he did when he poured the gasoline on himself.
Yeah. That's a different. But then, is gasoline oil?
I mean, I don't know that. I don't know, but I think anything. It seemed to me that like anything raised. Well, that might have been. What was that?
Any petrochemical substance.
Yeah, anything from that, because he was doing it from everything from there to like coconut oil, I think, right? So if he gets like a massage, does he turn into the?
Yeah, baby oil. Well, no, because I guess it's probably using the Chinese character for oil, which petrol is just electric oil, basically, as a
Okay,
translation, right?
okay.
So maybe by through language semantics, it's basically
It's
technically
it's
oil.
it's fine either way. It's like a slick lubricating, material that can also catch fire. It's that's fine. But so yeah, so I did like the monster. I just didn't think it was used it didn't seem like a really effective horror movie monster to me. At least the way they used it. But I have to say I did. I know you didn't like the effects. I kind of did like the effects, and the reason why is number one, I grew up on practical effects, and for me, whenever I watch CG, there's always I feel like there's like a disconnect between the CG creature and the thing that it's like the people that it's interacting with. Like if they hit somebody, I don't feel like they're actually hitting them, and so.
Just a quick comment on that
Sure.
one. Like I've seen so the main thing with CG is like good CG, you don't even realize it's there. If you know it's CG, then it's already an example of like not good implementation
No,
of CG.
I agree with you. But I just find that too often when I'm watching movies, I feel like I wish they would just do it. I'd rather see like a bad practical effect. Do you know what I mean? Where I know there's real contact between the actors than have the. And I'm not knocking CG because I mean, when Jurassic Park came out, I was amazed. I half believed there were real dinosaurs on the screen when I went and saw that in theater. So I understand the impact that good CG can have. I just wish that they didn't totally jettison the practical effects the way that they have. And so when I see a creature like this, even though like there are times you can actually they basically put a big jacket on him and covered him in goop is what it looked like really sticky goop, and you could even see the sleeve of the jacket, which kind of took away from the the impression they were trying to create. But again, that kind of had its own charm. Do you know what I mean? Because like even then I'm like, well, at least it's still a guy in a suit. Like actually strangling this person. It's not like a it's not like a green screen effect.
Yeah. I mean, I can appreciate it for its time, but just coming from I was born in '88, so I'm sort of used to special effects making sort of leaps and bounds since then. So, I mean, it's definitely not like terrible. Like I think for its time, it was great, right?
I mean, I'd have to compare it. I'm trying to think through movies from that era, and it's a little bit hard on the fly. But I mean, I've definitely seen much better practical effects. I'll say that.
Okay.
I've seen much better practical effects. I've also seen a lot of really crappy horror movie practical effects. So, this is. I think the thing that this suffers from more than anything else, it's just the overall design of the monster is a little bit awkward and maybe not as fine tuned as it could have been. But what did you think of there was sort of I think it was rotoscoping or some other similar type of technique where they were using like animation to create the effect of him turning into oily goo and sliding under the door and stuff like that. What did you think of that aspect of the effect and the monster itself?
Well, I was just thinking. I'm just trying to think if there was like a practical way they could have done that wasn't so obviously
a cartoon.
Yeah, it did take me out a little bit there because I was thinking, if you're gonna go with a crappy rubber suit already, surely there must have been something that you could think of to sort of replicate a patch of oil moving along.
Well, I will say this in its defense. When I was young and we watched movies that had those kind of effects, we were pretty ready to suspend disbelief because we kind of knew what the limitations were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this was still pretty obvious, but I remember seeing a lot of movies that had those kinds of effects in them. And like the same thing with like the green screen with like the really heavy trim around the outline of the characters. Like when like some guy, like, the classic thing when like a giant monster picks up the woman and you can see like all around her the white line against the background. We were pretty forgiving of that too, just because we understood what the limits were. But Yeah, I don't know. I thought that it was actually more effective, kind of to add to your point, when they were just having it like when he was just showing up through the drain and stuff, and so you'd see like literal liquid goo just flow into the tub, and that seemed perfectly serviceable to me. But I guess they did have to at least convey the idea that it was him, that he was able to transform in this way, and so that's why they did it with the cartoonish rotoscoping effect.
Mm. Well, I'm trying to think if they had done it with, say, sort of freeze frame animation with sort of some a dark clay or plasticine or something to sort of make a flowing thing instead, would that have looked better? But
I feel like we got a few freeze frame things like that when his head was reforming, and it looked really weird. It wasn't the best freeze frame stuff that I've seen. So I imagine it probably would have looked not so great just by the way they were doing it. But I mean, we're sort of getting into the Clash of the Titans period. So like, but like, I don't know if they had Clash of the Titans money on this movie, which is another thing to consider. I think this had a pretty low budget. And so, or at least it wasn't like, Hollywood blockbuster level budget. But what did you think of the main character who became the Oily Maniac, the Danny Lee character, Sheng Yun? Did you?
I can't stop thinking of him as like a superhero sort of now. So like the down and the down and out person, who's gone through a lot of shit in life, and he's gotten his hands on a superpower and is like trying to cope. And it just really, that sort of mental image of him really fits for me now. But I think him as a character, he was sympathetic, definitely. Like the whole polio thing, and having to watch one of his one of his not relatives really. Abba was like his not father-in-law either, because he didn't get with the daughter.
He called him uncle, so but it seemed to be like a term of endearment.
Yeah, like somebody he was close to being executed for trying to protect, his loved ones was, he's definitely gone through a lot of shit, and it's sort of understandable why he's got so much sort of rage built up in him. Despite his sort of demure appearance and like seemingly, being very self-conscious about his crippledness. I'm not sure that's a politically correct term. It is his handicap.
But in '76, they wouldn't have thought that. Like that would have been what they would have said probably, which is I think what the subtitles were.
Yeah.
I thought that the polio storyline worked. It was it was, and it wasn't one of these things where the character was like, he wasn't overwhelmed by that aspect of it. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like, you almost didn't notice it until it came up. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I thought that they did a really good job of weaving that into the story. And I thought that the dynamic of him being in love with this woman and this other woman being in love with him really worked well. I think Ho Meng-Hua is pretty good with that. I think he's generally good at having, sort of simply drawn characters that create interesting dynamics. And, you don't need, I think a lot of people think, like good characters have like these tremendous levels of depth or these character arcs over the course of a movie. And I think good characters can also just be very well placed, simple characters that are believable, and the right actor is chosen to play them. And so I think Danny Lee was very good in this role, in kind of in the same way that Tanny Tien was really great in that Black Magic role. Like, you just kind of automatically clicked with that character, and I automatically clicked with this guy. And it wasn't that he was like a super deep character. He was just a simply made character that was fit well into the story. And so I like that aspect of it. I thought that I really, it's one of the reasons why I really wish that I could have given this movie more than a C or something, because I was really enjoying the love triangle aspect to it, and I was sympathetic to him. I was very sympathetic to the Lily Lily character, and maybe not so sympathetic to the Chen Ping character, who is sort of, I don't think you were supposed to be as sympathetic to.
I don't know. Like I thought she was pretty sympathetic as well. Like she, ultimately at the end you love who you love, right? And just because she didn't love Danny Lee's character doesn't necessarily mean she was bad for her. Like she seemed like she was pretty clear on like, well, I really care for you, but I don't love you. And to have for her to be subject to such betrayal and knowing about it as well, finding out that her boyfriend sold her out to someone who then proceeds to rape her and then lead to her committing suicide. I thought she got the pretty bad end of the stick as well, because I think Abba was Kufing's character was her father, right?
Yeah.
So her father was executed for trying to stop her from being sexually harassed, and then.
No, I agree with you. But here's the thing. Like, I agree with the fact that like she didn't do anything wrong. Like her character didn't do anything that warrants a lack of sympathy. But I don't feel that she was presented in a sympathetic way. Like she, like her father died, right? And we don't really like if Danny Lee's father died in this, we would have gotten a really strong, impactful scene from him showing his grief. Do you know what I mean? And we did. He gave that scene when he went to the office and they were reprimanding him, and we feel bad for him because this guy he calls uncle has just died from being executed, and his boss is already harping on him to finish a file an hour later. But all we get from Chen Ping is her head downcast. We don't get a lot. There's not a lot of lingering thing. Like there's a scene where she's assaulted, right? But we don't get any impression. They don't give us any indication of how that affected her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then even when her boyfriend betrays her, we don't really get like the emotional betrayal. We get like the fear and terror of all the stuff that's going on around that. But we don't get like the sense of like, I'm in love with this guy and he's completely upturned my world. Do you know what I mean? In the way that we get with Danny Lee's character, where he is, he's in love with her and she's really in love with somebody else, and you can see in his, and it's not Chen Ping's acting at all. That it's just that the movie doesn't spend any time giving the attention to that. So I felt that I wasn't as sympathetic to her as a result.
Do you think, like, if she had hammed it up a bit, like, crying in despair after seeing her boyfriend drinking with her rapist in the office kind of thing would have helped? Or I think I'm just thinking because one strange thing was actually, despite the fact that her father was executed, like the fact that she wasn't, there to collect his remains or whatever, that seemed a bit off to me as well. Like she had to wait for Danny Lee's character to come and tell her that, your dad's been executed. That was really odd. I'm not really sure what was going on there. Like, was she not allowed to hear about this? Like, why was she waiting for someone else to tell her that her dad was executed? Like, was it not a sure thing? There were lots of strange decisions around that, I think.
I don't know. I mean, maybe she wouldn't have been allowed there for some reason. I mean, I don't know what the cult, if there was like a cultural thing or whatever, but I just didn't. I don't think it didn't require her hamming it up. I just think that it would have required an additional scene or two, kind of like we got with Danny Lee, where he was in the office and we got to see him. Again, it only works because it's him, but he also has the boss and the boss's mistress kind of harping on him, and we also get the Lily Lee character sympathizing with him, and it just creates this atmosphere of we feel bad for the guy. And I don't think that there just wasn't anything like that with the Chen Ping character. I don't know that the film necessarily needed it, because it might have just been, it might have been additional material that would have taken away from the flow of the movie. But I just, but because that wasn't there, I just, even though you had this sequence of horrible things happening to the character, you just didn't really feel that much sympathy for her, I found. Or at least I didn't. I don't know. But I felt a lot more sympathy for Lily Lee's character, and she actually, the only terrible thing she really suffered was unreciprocated love. So, But they gave us the attention to her character to give us that sympathy. So.
Well, I don't know. Like finding out your crush is murdering oil monster is pretty can be a bit traumatic as well, right? And then having him ask you to kill him is another.
Fair enough. I'm overlooking some crucial details there. And I do have to say she handled that in a very dignified way. I thought she was very, like she when she finds out he's the oily maniac, but she still makes curry chicken for him, and is still clearly accepting of him and trying, doesn't want him to kill himself and all this stuff. So but Lily Lee is good in those kind of roles. She's I also felt like, and I guess this would be deliberate because he's not really supposed to have chemistry with Cheng Ping, but I felt like he and Lily Lee had more chemistry than he and Cheng Ping had. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, the only time you sort of see Danny Lee and Cheng Ping together, like, it did feel a bit awkward because, it sort of was clear from the very beginning that he had the hots for her, but she was kind of like, yeah. And most of it was just like me getting ready to cringe for when he's like, "I love you," and he did. He asked her to marry him, and she was like, "Nope, I've actually been seeing this other guy for a while now. I'm in love with him." And was that before? When was the kiss scene as well? There's like one really awkward kiss scene as well.
That was right after I think that was after the father died, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. After she hears about her father's death and she's like upset in the room. And Danny Lee was like, "I'll protect you."
Yeah.
And then she just looks at his legs and doesn't say anything, and then he just like, "Oh," at the window for a bit.
And I thought that was very touching. That was the part of the character that I thought really worked, was this idea that he in the movie he's supposed to be cast as a protector for her, and he can't fulfill that because of his condition, and it was a very sort of believable angst. So I thought that really worked. But yeah, I would agree. It was awkward. That kiss scene was. I thought that was a well done scene, actually. That everything was pretty clearly done there, and I thought that it worked. What did you think of the sleaze factor of this movie? That's been a common theme in a lot of these films. Definitely with Hex, but we also got it with the Black Magic movies, and it was certainly on display here. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was an acceptable amount for the story. Like it didn't feel like gratuitous at any point. Like it always felt relevant. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, right? I mean, like I'm trying to think of.
I feel like it was like relevant, but as long as we're here, we might as well. You know what I mean? Like it was that kind of a.
Yeah, I mean, like some parts of it were, the car scene, like. When the lawyer and his mistress finally get their comeuppance, so it was a bit like, well, did it really need to progress that far before he killed them? Like it could have been a bit earlier. I don't know. Like, and then we had like the weird scene with the plastic surgeon woman having to do like. What's it called? Labiaplasty or whatever they're called. Yeah,
I was a little unclear on some of the things going on in that scene actually, but that was that was an interesting because here's the thing about a scene like that was not gratuitous because that hits you in the gut when you see those kinds of procedures done in a movie. Do you know what I mean? Like that, like that makes you uneasy, and so nobody wants to see genital surgery. No matter how attractive the genitals are, do you know what I mean? Like it's not a pleasant thing to think about in any way.
I'm gonna go against the grain and say that most genitals, like if you look at them properly, they're not that attractive in general.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, fair enough. But you know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to think about that kind of pain. And so. I thought that was actually an effective scene as a result because you're really cringing the whole way through, but yeah, this was definitely a movie that has a lot of rampant toplessness in certain key scenes, not like throughout the whole film, but there are scenes where there's a lot of it, and again, Ho Meng-Hua is no stranger to that. We had that in Black Magic. I think we had it in Black Magic 2 as well. And this is just a more full, expression of that same, I think, impulse that he has as a director.
Just a random comment is that I find it interesting that the guys always have to take their tops off as well before they're about to do any sexual assault or anything.
Yeah, no, there were, yeah, because that did keep happening. That's
It's like every time they're about to, sexually assault someone, it's like, hold on a second, just give me a minute to take off my shirt, fold it up, so leave it somewhere so it doesn't get crumpled or whatever, and then I'll get around to traumatizing you for life. And
yeah, I don't know. I suppose it couches the whole scene in sort of like it establishes a certain pacing to it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I found those scenes a little bit. They were a little too casual about all that. I thought that like the scene where the guy goes out and smokes a cigarette while his friend is getting killed by the Oily Maniac, when he's trying to assault her. I thought he was way too calm and relaxed when he's going out there having a cigarette. That just seemed kind of I don't know. It just didn't seem like the sort of thing a person does.
Well, maybe to be fair, like the Yang brothers, they seemed like the implication seems that they were that type of people, right? That they're probably so used to doing these evil deeds, and also sort of highlighting the fact that they deserve what they got, what was coming to them as well. Was they're so blasé about raping. So it's fine. I'll go after you're done. I'll just be outside smoking a cigarette. It's all right.
I guess like you do reach a certain, like if you're a criminal for so long, you reach a point where you can just be that blasé about it,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just figured there'd be some amount of anxiety on their part. You know what I mean? But it was just, they were just totally calm, and I don't know. I thought those scenes again. It was 76, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But again, there's not like really any until I guess in the last scene there was, because she commits suicide over it. So maybe I'm wrong. But in the first scene, I felt like there was no consequence, no real impact on her character. Which I just mentioned
from
before.
her like being rescued from, like, she was never actually assaulted. Like, so the thing is, like, why? So yeah, maybe you're right when you say that the movie doesn't give enough attention to Chen Ping's character, because she had home invaders, knocked unconscious.
Yeah, they punched her in the face. They ripped off her clothes. They punched her in the face. That's like a traumatic evening, right? That's like not like the Oily Maniac stopped them before they did everything. But I would think there would still be like I think she would still have some stuff to work through.
She woke up the next morning with a guy dead in her house, right? Like, I would imagine most people, if you wake up to a corpse in your house, you would be pretty goddamn traumatized.
Yeah. So I mean, and that was just, I think, sort of the way that character was handled throughout the movie. And again, we know, I think it was just because maybe they thought it would have been added confusion, because they were perfectly fine making Lily Lee sympathetic. Do you know what I mean? And having us experience some of her sort of internal emotions, but with the Cheng Ping character, there just wasn't any of that going on. I thought it was, even though there were these really, horrible things happening to her, but we didn't get any sense of, this is how she feels about it, until the very end. But even then, I still didn't feel like I was in her head the way I was in Lily Lee's head. You know what I mean?
Do you think it's just like down to the writing at the time? Like, I don't know who wrote the script, but it feels like one of those things where people don't really know how to write from the perspective of a woman or someone they can't relate to, that they just sort of like, well, write these events and then not really give much thought to the consequences.
I mean, I don't think so in this case, because like I said, they got me into the head of Lily Lee. Do you know what I mean? And like that.
But then again, like you mentioned already, that nothing really happens to Lily. Like, okay, so we mentioned, her finding out Crush is a murderer and blah blah blah. But again, we don't really get much of her reaction. She all she does is like she makes dinner for him in a very calm way or whatever, and like she doesn't really react in any noticeable way either, right? You say she was dignified, but on the flip side, I'd say that she does the same thing as Chen Ping and just ignores what's going on. It
Okay.
doesn't give the appropriate reaction.
I would say I don't think that it's just a product of the time, because I feel like there were a lot, like not that there weren't like blind spots then, just that I feel like I've seen enough movies from that period and from that region that would have paid more attention to the aftermath of that. I just don't think it was a priority here, because I feel like they made a conscious choice to not, there are only so many characters in this movie that you can focus on, and they probably didn't want to dwell on 3 characters. They wanted to dwell on 2 is how I interpreted it. Because I mean, there's a movie called Vengeful Beauty, which we should probably see, that Ho Meng-Hua did, that I think would maybe be an interesting film to watch and examine in that sort of in that vein, and compare it to this and see, okay, because we'd have a better sense of Ho Meng-Hua's ability to sort of focus more on a female character.
Well, like I don't know if I'd like put it on Ho Meng-Hua, but so much as the script writer, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think like Ho Meng-Hua did anything bad with the directing in the movie, but as a director, does he have the finals? I don't know how it worked for the Strawberry movies. Like, does he have the final say in what goes in the script or not? Or?
I don't know, but the script writer is Chua Lam.
Right.
And I'm looking him up, and he has, at least on Hong Kong Movie Database, I see 2 movies that he's credited for writing. He did other things, he's a producer and things like that. So I don't know. But I think that I don't know. I feel like Ho Meng-Hua did Lady Hermit, and that's I think he's perfectly capable of getting in presenting a female character, and so I don't think it was so much an issue of the I think obviously times change and movies are affected by the time they're in, but I think people sometimes way overplay how blind people at the time were to certain things. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially in the 70s, because there's a lot of really interesting movies out of this period that will get into that kind of territory. So I don't think that was it. I just think it was a prioritization thing.
Yeah, like I don't want to sort of sound like I'm disparaging what Ho Meng-Hua's done here. Like I think he did a perfectly good job with the movie. Like, but ultimately, like I think that movies aren't just as some of that what the director's vision is. It's also what they're given to work with in the form of the script. And if the script writer doesn't know how to write how a woman would react in certain situation, that's fine. It's not Ho Meng-Hua's fault. Like, he's doing what he
I
can
get what
with
you're
the
saying.
movie.
I guess I'm just inclined to think that I suspect that I don't know, but my feeling is I think the guy who wrote it probably could have made that connection that you're making, that there would have been these other effects of that happening, but chose not to dwell on it for any number of reasons. And I think maybe for plot expediency. Or maybe just so that the movie wasn't super depressing. I don't know. Maybe that was another consideration.
And to be fair, we have no idea. Yeah, short of like a director's cut where we hear Ho Meng-Hua talking about the movie. Like, I don't think we'll be able to get a definitive answer on why they.
Well, and I because there's a movie called Lady Snowblood, and there was also a movie that was a Hong Kong film starring Angela Mao, and I'm trying to remember the title, but it was based on Lady Snowblood. It was like a similar type of movie, and that's all about like it's all about vengeance for a rape and murder that occurred, and so I feel like this is, it isn't something that would have just been ignored because it was the 70s. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
And that's fine. Like, I'm just saying it was this particular script writer who wasn't really sure what he was writing, well, as opposed to every writer of that era.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I guess the only problem is when I look up his thing, there's only 2 movies, and I haven't seen the other movie, so I don't know. What is.
Maybe the fact that he only has 2 movies under his writing, portfolio says a lot about his writing skills. There. Yeah,
that is possible. That could be an indication. We should at some point maybe do Lady Snowblood. Now that we're talking about that, I know that me and Adam did it way back, but I think it would be a good movie. It's Japanese, so it's a little bit outside of what we normally cover here. But I would really like one day to do Lady Hermit, and then if I can just remember the name of the movie that Angela Ma was in, Broken Oath. That was it, Broken Oath, which was 1977, so a year later.
Blood, and then followed by Kill Bill.
And then then we could do Kill Bill. It's well, again, I think one of the fun things about, I know this is off topic, one of the fun things about Kill Bill is all the Shaw Brothers movies and Japanese movies that you can sort of tie the things to. Do you know what I mean? And I think when people see those connections, it makes the movie more entertaining. But yeah, so I guess, moving on to another topic. Ho Meng-Hua, you've now seen a bunch of his movies. You saw Black Magic, you saw Black Magic 2, you saw Lady Hermit a while ago with I think it was that me, you, Adam, and Elliot? Was that who was there for that discussion?
Possibly. I think Dion might have been there. I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I'll have to go back and check. But we talked about Lady Hermit a while back. I'm just curious what your impression of him as a director is based on this sampling.
I mean, I think he does a good job with movies. Like even though we've had quite a few sort of negative things to say about Oily Maniac, ultimately I think it was an okay movie. Like, it wasn't terrible. So while I think Black Magic 1 and 2 definitely were better movies from just looking from a horror or creepiness point of view, I think he's. I don't know. I didn't see anything sort of unique in the way that he was directing that would make him think, oh, this is definitely a Ho Meng-Hua movie. Like, okay, sure, the topless scenes and the sort of the pacing around those scenes maybe is a bit special, unique to him. But I don't. Other than that, like, there was nothing really like a Chang-Chi or Choi Yuen movie where it seems like, oh, this is a very distinct feel to it, kind of thing. And maybe that's just because I need to watch the movie in Ho Meng-Hua's movies a few more times to get that feel for it. But personally, I don't think there was anything stand out. No,
I feel like Ho Meng-Hua's thing might just be that he's really good at doing a lot of different kinds of movies. Do you know what I mean? Like, more than he has a feel like when you're informed it's a Ho Meng-Hua movie, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't leap out at you the way a Chang-Chi movie's like you just said. Like you see a Chang-Chi movie, you do not need to be told that Chang-Chi directed the film. You know within moments that it's either Chang-Chi or somebody trying to look like Chang-Chi. And the same thing with King Hu. Like, almost right away that it's a King Hu movie. And Choi Yuen, exactly like you said, like, it's a Choi Yuen movie. It's not always as obvious with Ho Meng-Hua. Sometimes I'll mistake, like, for the longest time I kept thinking that Human Lanterns was directed by Ho Meng-Hua for some reason. And just because it just looked like a Ho Meng-Hua movie to me. And so but I think he's a very good director. He just doesn't have the same sort of I don't know what you would say. I don't think he has like that. He doesn't have like a really flashy style. Do you know what I mean? He's not like he doesn't have one thing that he really does that catches people's attention. But I think he does a lot of subtle things. I think he's very good with characters and sort of just assembling groups of characters that have interesting relationships. Because if you think back to Lady Hermit, that was all about, Lady Hermit and this younger swordswoman and the love interest and then the black demon character and this sort of this love triangle and that it was a slightly imbalanced type of situation that really worked. And the same thing with Black Magic. That was I really, again, I think a lot of people will tend to focus on the characters are really simple, so they're therefore it's not good characterization. But I thought that Black Magic was really good at taking simple characters and combining them into an interesting array. And the same thing with Black Magic 2. And so I think here, even though we had our quibbles, I think that was another one of the strengths of the movie was the combination of interesting characters, like even right down to like the lawyer and his mistress. Do you know what I mean? Like the dynamics all worked really well.
No, and I would agree. Like all the characters in the Ho Meng-Hua movies I've seen so far have all been tied together quite nicely, and there are interesting beats about them that make you more interested in how they may not necessarily have the most complex of backstories. Like sometimes you don't even really know what they've been up to, other than the fact that they've got a setting that they're a doctor, for example, from Black Magic, or in this case we have a guy with polio who picks up a spell from a family friend, kind of thing. Like you don't necessarily need complicated backstories, and the fact that you can still make you feel sort of sympathy for these characters and understand their motivations a bit, and make a compelling story out of it, I think is definitely a strength. But ultimately, I still think that he doesn't really have like a signature thing that makes it feel a distinct feel about it. It's just lots of little things that that Ho Meng-Hua does, which will build up to a decent movie. But a lot of the time, I don't think there's anyone who's gonna be like, oh, I am a rabid fan of Ho Meng-Hua because he does this and this kind of thing, right?
Well, here's what I'll say. I think I became a fan of Ho Meng-Hua over time when I realized his name was on a lot of movies I liked, and so that's. He was kind of like the director who surprised me. I think at one point I remember it kind of dawning on me like, oh, I think I like this Ho Meng-Hua. He's I realized I had seen his name before, and I knew I was watching a Ho Meng-Hua movie, but I didn't realize how many of his movies I was enjoying. Do you know what I mean? And then I just kind of felt like I have to say I really enjoy Ho Meng-Hua films. They're really good. And
they're very consistent. I'll say that. Like they have a consistent level of quality, which is never really on the top tier of things, but never just average either. It's kind of like floating around between like just above average and not, kind of.
Well, and I feel like a lot of them have really stuck out in my mind after I've seen them. Like Vengeful Beauty, that still stands out. He made The Flying Guillotine. The Flying Guillotine is an amazing movie. He did Monkey Goes West, even. That's a very famous film as well. Lady Hermit has that classic scene where she says, "I'm going to take off your arm, and then your shoulder, and then your head," and it has these and this great classic villain, the Black Demon villain. And also there are a few things that I think that he's very competent at. He's not King Hu. He doesn't do like King Hu style compositions. But a lot of his scenes, when you see stills of them, you realize how well composed they are, and it's not always very obvious when you're watching the movie. Like if you look at any of the stills of the Black Demon fight scene in Lady Hermit, those really look good as just independent visual shots. And it's not 100% clear because the movie's moving, so you don't always catch it, but. And I was kind of noticing that a lot with this film. I feel like there was a lot of the scenes were really well constructed, and the same thing with the Black Magic movies. But again, it doesn't leap out at you the way a King Hu movie does, where it's like, there's like an awe you feel just at how he's filming the movie. But in hindsight, you kind of notice it. But yeah, I mean, so I think he just has he's just good at sort of doing a wide variety of films. He's good at characters. He's good at and also again, Flying Guillotine is a I think we'll have to do that at some point, because I think it's a little bit difficult for us to do a full assessment of Ho Meng-Hua without getting into Flying Guillotine and Vengeful Beauty and the Dragon Missile and movies like that.
Yeah, it sounds like we have enough Ho Meng-Hua movies to have a month around him.
There's plenty. There's Mad Monkey Kung Fu. There's Abbot of Shaolin, which is I think an incredible movie. It might be hard for us to obtain that for everybody though, so that might be a little bit difficult for us to do on the program. But yeah, no, there's a lot of movies that we could cover with him. But at the very least, I'd like to do like Flying Guillotine, Dragon Missile, and Vengeful Beauty. I think those, and when you guys see them, you'll know why. But I think those would be really good films to cover. But yeah, so I don't know. We've been going on for like 55 minutes now. So any closing thoughts on Oily Maniac? What would your recommendation be to people who are maybe thinking of watching it?
I will repeat that you shouldn't watch it as a horror movie. And after you mentioned superheroes, I would actually watch it as sort of like a slightly dark superhero movie more than anything else. And I think you'll enjoy it a lot more if you go into the movie with that sort of frame of mind of someone who gains superpowers and then eventually spirals out of control.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think there's a lot of good things about the movie, but it's definitely not the best Ho Meng-Hua movie I've seen. I do know a lot of people like it, so maybe there's something that's not clicking with me. But and maybe it's the cheese factor, and I just wasn't appreciative of the cheese factor this time around or something. But I just felt like I thought this movie could have been better. And I didn't enjoy it the same way I enjoy Black Magic or Black Magic 2 or Lady Hermit or other movies that he's done that I really like. But it was a fine movie. Like I wouldn't have demanded my money back or anything if I had seen this in the theater. I would have been content with what I had seen. But it just wasn't outstanding. And yeah, so I guess we're gonna head out now, and next month we're gonna start our new theme, which is movies with sword in the title. And so we're going to be doing a lot of movies that feature swords, basically. So we'll have. I should know within the next few days what our first movie is, and I'll post announcements about it. But again, if you've listened this long, thank you. If you want to support the podcast, check us out on our Patreon page. I have a link below in the description. It helps us get movies and DVDs so that everybody can watch them. It's not always that easy, so every little bit counts. And we do have a little reward tiers for different amounts that people can give. So if you want to check it out, just follow the link. And yeah, so we will be back on and talk to you later.